So, if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man, and do I get to choose what I do with my body?
Hey guys, and welcome back to our YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at pay gap SJWs getting destroyed. And you might want to stay tuned to the end, because you really don't want to miss this. Jordan Peterson destroys the pay gap.
9% pay gap. That's a gap between median hourly earnings between men and women.
But there's
that exists.
Yeah, but there's multiple reasons for that. One of them is gender, but it's not the only reason. Like if you're a social scientist worth your salt, you never do a univariate analysis. Like you say, well, women in aggregate are paid less than men. Okay, well, then we break it down by age, we break it down by occupation, we break it down by interest, we break it down by personality.
The little girl was angry.
But yet in America today, women for the same work, for the equal work, on average make 80 cents on the dollar.
The wage gap is simply the average earnings of men and women working full-time. It does not count for different job positions, hours worked, or different jobs. It has nothing to do with the same job. It has nothing to do with discrimination.
How do you explain a 9.8% gap between what women earn and what men earn?
Well, there are many different factors like job and age and experience and particularly time taken out of the workplace that haven't been taken into account. So you might as well say that brown-eyed people are more than blue-eyed people and call it discrimination based on this data in the same way that we're saying gender is being discriminated against. Neither are legitimate because you just haven't actually broken it down to see what the real comparisons are.
Listen to what Trump says.
So, if you become president, will a woman make the same as a man, and do I get to choose what I do with my body?
You're going to make the same if you do as good a job. You're going to make the same if you do as good a job, and I happen to be pro-life. Okay? I'm pro-life.
Okay.
The women's players are formidable athletes, and the Women's World Cup is growing rapidly in popularity, especially in the United States. But it's still nowhere near the Men's Cup in terms of world popularity. According to FIFA, the 2011 Women's World Cup had an audience reach of less than 250 million viewers. Now, that was around the world. For the Men's World Cup in 2010, the figure was 2.2 billion around the world. That same year, the Men's World Cup generated nearly 3.7 billion in revenue, while the Women's World Cup generated about 73 million. Now, FIFA may be a troubled organization, and sexism can probably be counted among its many vices, but the differences in its men's and women's prizes are actually less than the differences in its revenues from the two competitions.
Well, I have nothing to add on that.
Focused on being equal and not only showing the right figures, but having the right reality behind the figures.
Right.
So it's kind of very easy just to show on your company homepage some figures that are basically showing some reality that is not the reality. So we have a focused management that is kind of eager to show that the reality in the company is equal. So and we also have this laws here in Iceland.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Women do earn less in America because they choose to.
Yep, not surprisingly, he thinks the women's lawsuit is a waste of time.
Men's soccer has been getting 10 times the eyeballs.
You know what? I'm gonna let the ladies handle this one.
Well, we actually broke the record for the most watched soccer game in the history of America between men or women.
That's true. That's very true.
For 75 cents on the dollar. And I'm a smart businessman, and I'm not going to go with the lower cost equal talent or better talent. That's how can I run a successful business making that kind of decision?
How can you?
Yeah, it would they would be hired at far higher rates. Or you can look deeper at it and be like, oh, it's just like total jobs or whatever it is. Again, I haven't read any of the studies, but I just listen to people who have.
I think you're right. I think there's something to that. If they really could hire the same people for the same job and get a woman who's just as good at it for 75 cents, it's horseshit, though.
They would hire only women.
The people don't know what we're talking about. It's all based on what jobs you choose. It's like, it's not, the men don't make more money because they do the same job and make more money at that job than the woman does. They do different jobs. That's where the wage gap is. The wage gap is in the number of hours that men work, the different jobs that they choose, what they excel in. It has nothing to do with like two people that are both, you know, in the same line.
What? It means nothing.
They earned each week, or the full-time equivalent of, and then found the average and then did the same with women and worked out the difference and then turned that into a percentage of what men earned. That would be the wage gap. So it means, well, it means nothing.
Well, I mean, he might be saying something that is true, but it's just, eh.
It doesn't surprise me to hear a lesbian skeptical about family values. Since after their relationships start, you know, lesbian bed death sets in. You know, there's barely. I mean, it's look. What you have to understand about the wage gap is that it doesn't. First of all, it doesn't exist. It's based on a misunderstanding between wages and earnings. These are two different words in the dictionary. If you want to look something up, look that up. If you take all of the money that women earn and all of the money that men earn and you do a simple division, yes, you will find that the numbers are different. And that's because women make different life choices. If, however, you start to drill down to pay, you discover that if there is a wage gap at all, it is in favour not of men, but of women under the age of 30, at least in America.
So it seems like we can't compare apples to apples.
Yeah, but one of the problems is in the article, the reporter actually states that he doesn't know the jobs that men versus women are holding. So the challenge that we've got is we actually can't compare apples to apples. And the policies that she is pushing have to do with equal pay for equal work. So not we just pay women more because they're women, it's we pay them in the exact same job as a man, the same amount as a male counterpart. So that's the whole premise.
That demand was way high.
I felt stupid and humiliated and betrayed, but no one knew that I had this offer from Channel 10. I think the idea was to humiliate me because I'd been in negotiations to try and close the gender pay gap.
Say what? She was a warrior for the gender pay gap? She was apparently demanding an annual salary of $2.3 million and she plays the victim? Lisa, we all feel your pain.
Wow, she says a lot of things that are factual. She definitely does her homework.
But I think we do have choices, and I think feminism isn't against choice. I think the idea of feminism is that we have the opportunity to choose between what we want to do, whether we want to work, whether we don't want to work, whether we have careers, whether we don't. It's all about choice.
I mean, there are a couple of things there. I don't think feminism is about choice. It's actually put women in a situation where now we're much more compelled to work than we ever were before. We're forced to go out and leave our children in childcare at much earlier ages. And let's look at the facts. If we look at the facts, who lives 5 years longer? Women do. Who constitute the majority of homeless? About 95% of the homeless and rough sleepers. Men do. In all these different areas, who constitutes about 79% of the suicide rate? Who makes up who gets sentenced for longer times? Men do. It's hard. Who gets less funding on healthcare? Men do. It's hard to find one area where women are disadvantaged in relation to men.
Well, yes, he uses men's names at times.
Thank you, Senator. We work towards gender equality, and certainly there are times when policy response would necessarily involve addressing the needs of men in that.
Would your work be assisted if there was an office for men?
Was that from Riverdale?
I beg your misogynistic pardon? Oh my God, I'm so over the toxic masculinity in this hallway right now.
It's only redesign that is needed.
In workplace safety and specifically deaths at work, of which men comprise the overwhelming majority, you may end up closing the gender pay gap because more women would be in workplaces that are currently dominated by men. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, certainly BHP's example shows us that
more women will work in what were traditionally male-dominated work sites with a redesign of equipment and whatever. Whether there's a direct correlation between that and lowering the gender pay gap, I couldn't tell you, Senator.
Well, that's it for today's video, guys. Hope you guys did enjoy. If you guys did enjoy, then make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this and much more. I'll catch you guys next time. But until then, take care.